The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience 2018 British Open, DraftKings, Millionaire Maker Picks, and Preview, presented by Jägermeister. Give your beer a real shot this summer with a nice cold shot of Jägermeister. And you're probably going to need to stay awake all night with first tee around 1 a.m. Eastern time, all right? So get some energy in you. Daily Roto's Mike Leone is here. Fan Vice's Ben Rasa is here. And by here, I mean via the internet. I'll also have a cavalcade of the top golf experts in the world, giving you their top sleepers, fades, core plays, and picks to win the 147th British Open. The DraftKings Million Maker is $20 to enter with, of course, a cool million going to the winner. Now, since I'm a nice guy, I'm going to give you all a shot to get 20 DK dollars for a free entry, and there's a few ways to do this. First, give this episode a like and leave your favorite DraftKings play along with your DraftKings handle in the comment section. Boom! That's one. Second, if you're listening to the audio version of the show, leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, or wherever you're happening to listen to this. Thank you for listening, by the way, but wherever it is, just leave a quick sentence or two about the show, preferably positive, and leave your DK handle. That's two. Third, go to my Twitter, @ThePME, or Facebook.com/ThePME, and share any of the British Open shows you can find. Just a retweet on Twitter, no quote tweeting. So retweet and reply to the tweet with your DK handle on the hashtag DKBrit. DKBRIT. Sounds stupid. It's the only way I can track this stuff. I'll announce the winners on Monday's show. And all stats have been provided by FantasyNational.com, the premier golf stats and DraftKings tools destination on the interwebs. Since the Masters, Fantasy National members have won at least $1.4 million in DraftKings golf contests. With access to the customizable stat database, easy-to-use stat model, ownership projections, head-to-head history, event simulator, you may want to look into getting a membership if you're serious about competing for that $1 million top prize. Oh, and as a bonus, you can win a yearly membership to Fantasy National too. Simply go to @FantasyNational on Twitter, follow the account, and retweet the pinned tweet at the top. That's it. Whether you're an existing member or not, you're eligible to win the prize. I'll also announce that winner on Monday's show too. Good luck! Now, on to Carnoustie, where apparently they've been playing golf since the early 1500s. That seems like fake news, but I looked on Wikipedia, it tends to be true. It's the 8th time since 1931 the world's best have descended on the Scottish town to compete for the Claret Jug. And first, since Paddy Harrington needed a playoff to best Sergio Garcia in 2007. Yes, we're giving out picks on the show, but coming back next week for an update is going to be critical to allow us to adjust for the weather conditions. While you can't actually see the water from the course, Carnoustie's still incredibly close to the North Sea, and the lack of tree coverage leaves it completely exposed to devastating coastal gusts. Tee stacking is going to be huge, but with the randomness of the wind from the water, you have to wait till the absolute last second to see if there's an advantage that's going to open up. Or you may just have to tee stack draws blindly and put yourself into a position to get incredibly lucky. If someone asked you to describe a generic British Open, it would be Carnoustie. Incredibly damning rough, classic pot bunkers, which will sometimes be filled with water, wind, rain, gigantic greens, tiny rivers, which the Brits call burns, randomly just running through the fairways. Add in some random Euro player leading after round one, a senior whose last great moment was like a decade ago, going off in one of the final groups Sunday, some young Brit who's going to be like amazing in 5 years, John Daly, awkward sweaters. Essentially, you have everything you want from an Open Championship. There's 156 players in the field, with the top 70 in ties making the cut. No MDF this week, so if 82 make it, they're all playing all 4 rounds. And because of the course setup and randomness of the elements, most of the field's live to make the weekend, depending on if the conditions break their way. The final qualifiers from the Scottish Open, Andrew Landry, and the John Deere Classic will get added to the DraftKings player pool Monday afternoon, in case you were wondering. There's no one predominant skill set to target. You're looking for players who can manage each part of their tee to green game. If there are calm conditions, that will favor some of the bombers. If the gusts pick up, you're gonna need a grinder to avoid those blow-up numbers. So I'll lean accuracy over distance this week and simply prepare for the wind to pick up, like it always does. British Opens are always about treading water through the tough conditions, saving some pars, and piling up birdies during the calm windows, and playing just a shade over 7,400 yards as a par 71. The shorter hitters aren't completely out of play. They're going to be able to compete. In 2007, the low rounds of the tournament were dueling 64s, fired by Steve Stricker and someone named Richard Green. The winning score that year was 7 under par, and only 19 players finished in the red. As mentioned, Harrington topped Sergio to win, but there were other notables in the field that week that are still kicking around. Stewart Cink with 6, Stricker was 8th, Tiger, Jim Furyk, and Justin Rose all tied for 12th, with Pele Edberg and Marcus Breyer, who may or may not be real people. Pat Perez and Zach Johnson came 20th. Adam Scott, Ian Poulter, and Paul Casey were all T27. Phil Mickelson, Matt Kuchar, Henrik Stenson, Charles Schwartzel, and Francesco Molinari all missed the cut. And a fresh-faced amateur named Rory McIlroy was tied for 3rd after day 1, before eventually ending the week +5. Karnowski also hosted in 1999. You may remember Jean Van de Velde's meltdown on 18, eventually leading to Paul Lowry's only major victory. What you may not remember was the winning score. Patty won at 7 under in 2007. In 1999, the 3-man playoff was at 6 over par. Much like the rain, things can go sideways at a moment's notice. Oh, Tiger, Furyk, and Retief Goosen are all in the field this year and claimed top 10s at Karnowski in 1999. This is why a balanced tee to green approach to selecting players is absolutely the way to go. There are so many unknowns the course can present that all facets of the game will be tested. The approach element is going to be the most important, but needs to be paired with a modicum of accuracy and the ability to scramble out of garbage situations. Tack on links experience, especially lag putting in the wind, and you got the building blocks of a solid set of picks. Now, just pray they end up on the better side of the tee drop.
Do you even lift, bro?
When you're entering multiple lineups into the Millionaire Maker, you must trim down your player pool as much as possible and decide who are going to be your core players. For me, all things start with Dustin Johnson. Yes, he's the highest priced player, but pricing is uber soft, so you're not going to have any issues building quality lineups around him. He's yet to finish outside the top 20 in any of his 10 starts this year, including 2 wins and a top 10 and a top 5 in the year's first 2 majors. He's terrific in the wind, and like we saw at Shinnecock, he's one of the few players in the field who can keep it straight without losing too much distance. He's the number 1 player in the world for a reason. Don't let the price scare you off. Then, it's on to Alex Noren. In full disclosure, Patrick Reed almost took this spot, but I'll lean Euro in any tiebreaker this week. The Swede stormed the leaderboard Sunday in France, notching his 6th European Tour victory in the past 3 years. He's made the last 3 cuts at the Open with 2 top 10 finishes and is one of the few players in the field who rates out positively in every key metric. Great in the wind, used to random conditions, and a fantastic links player. The best news? Noren's only $8,300. Now, let me bring in the entire team of experts to hear about their core players, starting with Rick Gaiman, founder of DFS On Demand and the Rick Run Good YouTube channel.
The first of my core plays is going to be Henrik Stenson, who withdrew from the Scottish Open with an elbow injury, which hopefully just means he's going to go get a few extra practice rounds in. Stenson doesn't play a lot on the PGA Tour, so it's easy to overlook his 4 straight top 25 since the Players' Championship, and he has unbelievable Open Championship history with 5 top 10s, including his historic win in 2016. Then I'm rounding out my core with Tony Finau, who we always get a price premium on in major championships, and it's no different this week. Finau was the favorite to win the Greenbrier, and he enters with 3 top 25s in his last 4 starts. He's only played the Open Championship twice, but he's compiled a 27th and an 18th place finish, and he's showing us real chops in majors this season, finishing with top 10s in both of the first 2 majors this year.
Jeff Ulrich from DK Live and FantasyGolfMetrics.com.
Pat, my first core team pick for the 2018 Open Championship is going to be Sergio The old Sergio Garcia's back. T12 in Germany, T8 at the French Open. Yeah, he was hitting into the water there late Sunday, but who cares? I trust Sergio on the link-style course, especially Carnoustie, where he's got the 2007 revenge factor to fall back on. At 9K, he's easy to fit in. So give me some Sergio. Also give me some Alex Noren at 8,300. Coming in off the French Open win. Very tough link-style setup. Just screams Alex Noren in my mind. I love his attitude. He might shoot 76 day one and then come back with a 64 day two. It's a roller coaster, but it's great for DFS. Give me some Sergio at 9K. Give me some Alex Noren at 8,300. Both affordable. Those are my core team plays for this year's Open.
Reed Fowler from DK Live, the DraftKings playbook.
My second core play is going to be Tony Finau at $7,200. Really good price for Tony Finau. This is where we like to see him. Top 25 in strokes gained, tee to green, as well as bogey avoidance. Top 20 in greens in regulation over the past 24 rounds. And he's one of those second-tier guys that we can really see break through because of his elite ball striking. Again, really good finishes at the majors. Could have one of those Ricky Fowler seasons where he does well at all the majors, remains to be seen. But at $7,200, you can't pass up on Tony Finau. That's my second core play.
Do you even lift, bro?
All right, let's start digging into the field. Joining me to break down every important player, at least the players that we deem that are important. First up, from DailyRoto.com, the co-founder and a second-place winner of the Masters Millionaire Maker. Not this year, last year. Still, a hole-in-one by Kuchar. Goes a long way to pad your bank account. It's Mike Leone. What's up?
You know, Kuchar's been kind to me in the majors. The hole-in-one at the Masters, and then he also finished second at the Open Championship last year when I was third in the Thunderdome. So we'll see if I go back to Kuch. But yeah, definitely make sure you check out dailyroto.com. We've got the projections. We're going to have a podcast for this upcoming week, and we've got the data golf finish probability. So just a really good, well-rounded product, get you ready for the Open Championship.
My best major last year was the Open Championship because I had a plethora of Jordan Spieth, Matt Kuchar, and Ian Poulter. Unfortunately, I think I played like 85% Bryson coming off his win at the John Deere, and he made triple bogey on the first hole and never really got it back together after that. So it didn't really turn out to be that profitable of a week for me. When you have first and second, it's not so bad. Hopefully, we can replicate that. And if you talk about coming third in the Thunderdome at a major, what about just like winning the Thunderdome at a major? Ben Rasa, fanvice.com, what's up?
Hello, sir. How you doing?
I'm all right. You got money you can lend me here? I lost all my money to you two last time.
Yeah, Keegan.
Thank you, Keegan.
That was the sweetest money. You know, winning the Thunderdome obviously was awesome, but you can't put a price on the Keegan prop bets.
Let us know what you guys got going on at fanvice.com over major week for the Open Championship.
Yeah, obviously we're in full swing. So we're going to have projections, articles, a couple shows behind the paywall, and then we're also getting ready for NFL. It's just right around the corner, doing a little summer league, and then we got baseball, which seems to never end. So fun time over at Fanvice. Come give us a try. Obviously, a great week to jump on in.
I got some football content out as well. I've released my top 200 rankings for fantasy football season. Evan Silva and I broke that all down. Plus, I'll have position-by-position rankings with Garion and Tim Andercuss. They'll be out over the weekend, so you can check those out. They're a lot less professional than when I was talking to Silva. You can put it that way. But before we get into the very top of the field, obviously, Open Championship, we got to talk about the weather. We're a week away when we're recording this on a Wednesday, so we don't really know what the weather is going to be like, except for that there's likely to be some. So how much impact do you think the weather, Mike, will have in impacting the lineups that you build?
Oh, it's going to have a huge impact. We saw 2 years ago that you had one of the biggest discrepancies in strokes gained by weather draw. That was the year Stenson won, where if you stacked that wave, you did unbelievably well. And I remember I was pretty tilted because I was in Charlotte. That's when New York didn't have DFS golf. And I had just moved back to New York before it was all the way back, and I couldn't play that week, and everyone at Daily Roto smashed with that weather draw. But it can be a massive advantage. I mean, you're talking about a couple of strokes difference potential here in a link style course, and I think that's something that you really need to key in on, like all the way up to the lock on Wednesday.
If there's no pronounced draw, Ben, that it's in like, hey, the AM wave is the wave that you want to be in, will you still be stacking tee times either way just to hope to get lucky on one side?
Yeah, absolutely. Over there, I mean, we've seen this even on the PGA Tour. There's, one way, okay, the AM looks better. And then by the end of the tournament, actually the PM turned out to be the draw. It can change really fast. So I think there's definitely merit to throwing a couple. Obviously, you can lean with what the forecast is, but I certainly will have stacks of both tee times, when it's all said and done.
All right, yeah, and so you can catch the rest of the Pat Mayo experiences throughout the week. Friday, Monday, Tuesday, live chat, Wednesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the DraftKings YouTube channel. We'll try to get you all caught up on how everything is rounding into form, because what's a great pick today, especially at the lower levels of the pricing, you might just want to flip that to someone on the other side of the draw if it's looking super shitty for them. So let's talk about the guys at the top. They're the important ones. You need to nail these guys if you're going to win, or at least have a chance for $1 million in the Millionaire Maker. We're going Dustin Johnson, 11.3, Rory McIlroy, 11,000, Jordan Spieth, 10.6, Justin Rose, 10.2, Justin Thomas, an even $10,000. I don't know how many of these guys I'm going to play from the top end. However, I know there's one guy that I love, and he's the one right now that he's in the early lineups that I built, the early construction. He's the only one in the $10,000 range I'm using, and I'm using like 70% of them. And it's Dustin Johnson. Do you guys have any feel for some of the other guys besides DJ? Because to me, he has by far the best chance of winning this event.
Yeah, our early finish probabilities have Dustin Johnson with an 8% chance to win the event. We've got Rose with 5%, and then everybody else kind of in a third tier by themselves. So clear separation up top for Dustin Johnson. His adjusted strokes gain metrics over the last 24 months, 12 months, 6 months, 2 months, he's first, and second. So just absolutely absurd run of golf, and, very little variance in there. It's been sustained run of elite level play. So I'm with you. I think he's definitely the clear cut play, and probably a little bit underpriced even at 11.3. And I feel like the pricing for this major is a little softer in the low 7s, high 6s than maybe we've seen, making the studs and duds more appealing relative to that balanced lineup that we often see at the majors because of the loose pricing in the middle. So I'm with you and DJ. I think he's the best play. Beneath him with Rory, that's a guy that I'm likely full fading. I don't really understand the odds being, just piggybacking on DJ.
So, Ben, when you look at the board here, DJ and Rose seem to be the two favorites by a lot of people. I don't know if I'm going to play Rose yet. DJ for sure. I'm not going to play any Spieth. Just please don't try to talk me into that, because I've committed to the full fade on this one. But you're always on Team Rory. Are you going back to Team Rory?
Yeah, I'll certainly be on Team Rory again. I think obviously if you're looking at it objectively, DJ and Rose of the top guys, the 10K plus, they check all the boxes. They're playing well. I think the game suits it. Rory to me is the wild card that I'm willing to take. Obviously Spieth's a wild card, but it's too extreme right now. Obviously in a tournament like the Millie, you can always dabble there because he certainly has the upside. But Rory, I think, is a worthwhile guy. If you're going to get a discount, I think he honestly is maybe slightly overpriced when you look at DJ's only $300 more. But that could temper the ownership. Obviously, it's very soft. I thought the pricing, I'm with Mike in that regard. So you have no problem if you take one of these guys. It's not like you have to sacrifice that much when you fill out the rest of your roster.
Yeah, you can even pile in like a low $9,000 guy if you want to and just go very much to the bottom. That's why I think when we get to the 9K range, there's one player that I think could press 30% ownership. He might not come in quite that highly, but if you can pair him with Dustin Johnson or pair him with Rory McIlroy or even Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas is the big one here for me that I'm just hearing no buzz about him. Even when you look at the betting market, he has the same odds as Ricky Fowler to win, despite the fact that he actually wins tournaments where Ricky does not. Ben, do you have any idea what you're going to do with JT? And are you full fading Jordan Spieth?
I probably will have a sliver of Spieth, but if he's over 10%, I probably come in underweight. Justin Thomas is tough. I'm not a big JT guy. When he was just rolling, I was constantly coming in underweight. And this is another situation where it seems like he does get lost in the shuffle. I think he's pretty polarizing in the sense that this is a tough course, obviously. When you look at the British Open, it rotates. I think this is probably the toughest one these guys have faced, especially the guys who are a little younger. I could see him having to really test the patience. Him and Rahm are kind of in that bucket where you're going to have to take bogey on some holes. If you press it too hard, too fast, it can unravel. So, in GPPs, yeah, I will have some, but I'm not sure that I get overweight depending on where his ownership falls.
Mike, you in or out on JT?
I'm in on JT, especially if you think that, his standard deviation of results is like a legitimate thing in his game where he has this ability to rack up some high-end finishes that are beyond what his scoring averages would indicate. So if you believe that, we've seen, and if you believe it's not just variance that he's been able to crank out some of these high-end results, I think he shoots way up the board. He's at one of his better price tags, I think, than he's been at the previous two majors. And as you said, not a whole lot of buzz on him. So I'm in on him. I'm out on Spieth like you are, Pat. I'm out on Rory. So JT, DJ, and Rose are the three I'm looking at up top. And I wonder if this group collectively goes a little bit under-owned, just because I thought at the U.S. Open, given the difficulty in DraftKings scoring there on a tough course, that people would go more studs and duds and emphasize the finish points. But the ownership percentages really didn't play that out. I was really surprised where the ownership percentage on DJ landed at the U.S. Open. So if that happens again, you might be able to be overweight on a few guys up top, which is usually hard to say because they're usually around 20% and you're making a whole ton of sacrifices.
Well, the big thing with Spieth, before we close out on these top 5 guys, is we talked about his putting all year long. Tee to green, he was so good. And then, the putter just couldn't catch up and he couldn't have these high-end spikes in tournaments. All of a sudden, 2 of his past 3 events, because we don't have all the data from the U.S. Open, so it could be 3 in a row, but I'm just excluding that one, giving him the benefit of the doubt. Like, he putted well at the Travelers and lost strokes tee to green. At Memorial, he lost strokes tee to green. That is ultra concerning for me. So I know the contrarian move. He and Rory are going to be the 2 lowest guys, I think, of the people above $10,000. So people are going to say, hey, he's a great tournament play. He's going to come in at low ownership. I can't conceive a way where I would play Jordan Spieth knowing that Dustin Johnson's right there, Justin Rose is cheaper, and they just seem like there's such better options.
The other thing, too, in these loaded fields, you're going to get a handful of chances to get guys at low ownership. So you can't play every single one just because they're low ownership. And I'd rather take chances on lower owned guys at cheaper price points and up top really stick with the guys I'm most comfortable with. And because he won the Open last year, I know obviously different course, but I still think that's going to have some carryover effect in terms of ownership where you're not going to get him ridiculously low owned. I think the gap in ownership between him and DJ up top isn't going to be as wide as it should be.
Next 5 guys, Ricky Fowler tops John Rahm, $9,800 tops the $9,000 list. That goes into Ricky Fowler at 9.7, Tommy Fleetwood at 9.4, Brooks Koepka at 9.2, and Sergio, the playoff loser at Carnoustie in 2007. I almost said 1999. 2007, Sergio had his chance, missed the par putt on 18, went to a playoff and lost to Patty Harrington. This is a tough one for me. I know I was all in on Rahm at the U.S. Open. Bad move. But this time around, at the French Open, he played well, got himself into some fescue, and that was the end of his tournament. He had a very poor round 1 at the Irish Open, and then all of a sudden you just look and John Rahm's inside the top 5 by the end of it. Is Rahm the best play of this bunch? Because when I alluded to the guy earlier who's going to be close to 30%, he's got the British narrative, he's played well at both majors. It's Tommy Fleetwood that I don't know if I can eat that much chalk on Fleetwood. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, the Fleetwood thing is going to be, he's just going to get so much hype. He's already getting it. The Carnoustie, I think he has the course record here. I'm looking elsewhere. Ricky's a guy, I know we say he doesn't win, but, much like Paul Casey, they don't win until they win. I don't think that that's overly concerning for me. These bunkers are very difficult. Ricky's a great scrambler. I think he does set up well. The guy that, I did allude to him a little before is Rahm. I'm nervous, obviously, because you just talked about it at the French Open and even the Irish Open, on Sunday. He had a triple, then he recovered, posted a good finish, but it seems like he can't keep it together sometimes at these difficult spots for 72 holes. And it's hard to get in contention if you have a giant number out there. So I see the merit to playing him. I think Ricky's the guy for me in this range when you factor in the ownership of Fleetwood. I'm not really interested in Sergio or Brooks, to be honest.
And Mike, do you have any thoughts on Sergio coming in here? Obviously, he knows the course pretty well. He was disastrous in 1999, played really well in 2007 with a runner-up finish, and he did play pretty well at the French Open, too. I just don't think there's going to be any buzz for Sergio that if this tournament started 3 months ago, he'd probably be the highest-owned guy.
He might have been, and I know there's some narrative reasons that you mentioned to play him, but if you look at how he's played really over the last year or so, he just hasn't played well. I want to say, his recent form isn't that good, but really it's been a full year that he just hasn't played well, and I think he's overpriced. And if I'm taking a chance on ownership here, I'd rather go with Rahm, who you talked about. He's second in strokes gained off the tee this season, which I think is going to be really important at a long course, difficult course, to put yourself in good position off of the tee. And because he's at that 9,800 tag, people are going to drop down to Fleetwood and Brooks. There's a lot of guys in the high eights you can go to. Obviously the 10K plus guys we mentioned. I could see the ownership being really low on Rahm. I think he has that big upside. I don't see it out of Sergio. He just hasn't played well enough for me for an extended period of time to be considered at this tag.
Scrambling gained is one of the key stats that I'm looking for this week. That's not just around the green. I did factor in some around the green, but there's going to be situations across the course where if you just hit a wayward tee shot, you're going to be scrambling. You're not going to be scrambling from 10 yards off the green. You're going to see a lot like it was at the U.S. Open at Shinnecock that when you're in the shit, you're in the shit, and you have to kind of eat it a little bit. So in terms of fairways gained, in scrambling gained, as we look at it amongst the top few guys, Dustin's really good at it. Rory's pretty good at it. Spieth has been atrocious over the past 24 rounds. So is Rahm, and so is Tommy Fleetwood. Brooks, on the other hand, is number 4 when we look at scrambling gained over the past 24 rounds. That kind of leads me towards him a little bit, but I don't know how popular he's going to be, basically almost being the same price that he was at the U.S. Open coming off the major victory. Ben, do you think that people are going to turn to Brooks? Because I've heard zero about him.
Yeah, I don't expect him to be certainly overly popular or even that much buzz in general. I don't know. I think I'm one of those people. I fall into that trap with him. I have a tough time paying that price for him. Obviously, what he did at the U.S. Open, I was with you. I was all in on Rahm. So you know how my weekend went. But, yeah, I mean, he showed it there. He's got the formula. Certainly has the talent. If I can get over maybe with, say, 10, 15%, that's something I'll certainly explore. But if it looks like he's going to get up there in terms of ownership, I think I'm going to allocate my shares elsewhere.
Is it sad that the three of us don't seem to be all in on Tommy Fleetwood? Although I think all three of us really love Tommy Fleetwood.
I mean, the issue with Fleetwood that I consistently have is I always feel like our projections are a little bit behind on him, but he's been chalk in so many spots that if I'm going to manually bump someone, if I'm going to force someone in, I don't want to go out of my way to force in chalk. And I think this week in particular, that's what you would be doing. And you'd be doing it at a price tag that I don't know if he, deserves to be at. Maybe he does, but if you look at his odds, I think that on Bet365, he's 18-1 to win, which is just kind of mind-boggling to me. I think that's a really negative EV bet. And I'd much rather play Brooks. If you look at his finishes in majors history, 16 of 18 cuts. He's got 5 top 5s, 12 top 25s. I think Brooks an excellent play. I'm really high on him. I think even if he's chalk, he's a good play. That's one of the guys that I'm going to play, almost no matter what. And I'm hoping Fleetwood soaks up this insane ownership, because if he does, it's probably going to come from Brooks.
In terms of roster construction, Ben, if you play someone like Dustin Johnson, what you have left over if you pair him with a Rahm, or you pair him with a Brooks Koepka, or if you just go Dustin and then Tommy Fleetwood, is not looking the best. Is that a lineup construction that you would still explore?
For me, absolutely. Just because, and we'll talk about it as we get down there, there are guys that I like sub 7. I think real players, not some randos, where I can make it work. I'm also going to explore lineups where I actually have 3 or 4 guys in this, high 8s, low 9 range, and then mix and match at the bottom. I think you can do that kind of like an aggressive balanced lineup, because I found it pretty soft as you get down to the lower ranges.
Mike, are you more of a stars and scrubs guy this week? Because normally I know that you're more of a balanced type man.
I'm such a sucker for balanced builds, but I'm right with Ben on this. I think you could do like these aggressive hybrid builds where you've got 4 mid-high guys and 2 cheaper guys, or you can go DJ Brooks start. It works out fine. There's, I feel like, way more guys in the low 7s and high 6s than I'm used to seeing at majors. Last year when I won with Kuchar, it was, you could argue it really wasn't a good tournament play, even though it worked out, because he was in a high stakes contest, I think like 50% owned, because I think he was 7,200. He was the low 7s. There just wasn't much else down there that you really felt comfortable with. This week, I think there's enough guys to make it work. I think you can do all sorts of builds, but if people get stuck on that balanced build like they did at the U.S. Open, tough course, finish points matter. I do lean in tournaments to going a bit more aggressive in studs and duds. cash games, if you're playing, I think, generally balanced in these loaded fields just makes sense because you can end up with a 6 golfer that's so good.
So for me, my 2 favorite plays of the top 10 players in terms of pricing, 1 far and away is Dustin Johnson. I think number 2 might be Justin Thomas. Now that I started thinking about it, I don't know how much exposure I'm going to have to anyone in the $9,000 area because the 8s are just loaded with guys I like. So, well, why would I pay up for guys that I think that are pretty similar, to tell you the truth, especially in these conditions? So, Mike, who would be your 2 favorite plays from this top end?
I think a really fun tournament build would be to start JT and Rahm. So I'll go with those 2 guys.
Ben?
I'm going to say Rose and Ricky.
So we're all over the place here.
Yeah, we really are. Someone should be right, at least covering the bases.
All right, so these are all the guys that we like from the top end. We've explored some of the guys that maybe you don't want to play, but let me tell you my favorite bust of the week, along with some experts from around the community. Check it out. You can't pick everyone, so that leaves Jordan Spieth on the cutting room floor. And yes, fading Spieth is terrifying, but it did pay massive dividends at the US Open, and hopefully it does again. Well, he got his putting back in the positives at the Travelers. He's now lost strokes tee to green in 2 of his past 3 events. The driving is wayward, the irons are off, and he can only scramble out of so much danger. And what happens if the putting flips back again? He'd be toast. Now, it would be very Spiethian to come out of nowhere and win after everyone's given up hope. And listen, if you want to be contrarian, he's not going to be highly owned. But I can't pay for the 3rd highest price salary to a player that hasn't finished better than T21 with 2 missed cuts in any of his past 6 starts. Maybe the gang thinks differently, though. Ulrich, who you fade?
Pat, my high-end fade for the 2018 Open Championship is going to be Rory McIlroy at $11K. Just like I picked on Jon Rahm at the US Open for not getting it done at tough major championship venues, I'm picking on Rory here for the same reason. All of his wins have come at softer setups. Even his Open Championship win came at Hoy Lake with 18 under par or something like that. And Carnoustie, even if the conditions are mild, I'm just not sure it's going to play that easy. Rory's also not really been in great form of late. His putter's giving him issues again. That was what was helping him early in the year. So I just don't like the way this is setting up for Rory. At $11K, you really need him to top 5, maybe even win to pay off that salary. If he goes out and shoots 20 under again, I'm fine with it. He's going to be my high-end fade this year either way.
Reed.
My high-end fade this week is going to be Jordan Spieth at 10,600. Like, yeah, I get it. You're going to get depressed ownership for Jordan Spieth because of his current form at potentially 5 to 10%, but rightfully so. He's just not playing good. Over the past 24 rounds, he's close to ranked 100th in strokes gained putting as well as scrambling. And if you look at his bogey avoidance, he's 44th in that same time frame. Last year when he won at World Birkdale, we actually saw him win at Travelers. So we saw a bit of current form, but a couple missed cuts already. We saw it at the US Open that he didn't make the cut. So Jordan Spieth, you are my high-end fade at the Open Championship.
Rick.
The guy that I have to fade up top is Justin Thomas, and that's not a knock against Thomas, but I really like everyone else up in that range. Thomas is his stats are starting to regress to the mean a little bit. If you remember, he was absolutely scorching earth for the last 18 months, so the fact that they're starting to normalize makes a lot of sense. The last time we saw him, it was kind of an uninspiring finish at the Travelers, finishing in 56th, and then he has struggled in his 2 Open Championship starts with a 57th or a 56th 2 years ago, and then missing the cut altogether last year. So with that being said, JT is just the odd man out when it comes to those high-end guys.
Breaking down the $8,000 players, where a lot of my favorite plays are, and into the upper $7,000 range. Let's start with the name that we all need to talk about, Tiger Woods. He's only $8,900. Only, I say, because I feel like he's going to be very popular at this price. But here's the thing, Ben Rasa. When I rate him out over the short term, and I think about Tiger's game and think about this course, I think this is his best shot at a major this year.
I agree with that too. I like the fit. I like the price. He's going to be popular. That's obviously never good, but I think this is a pretty good spot for Tiger. And this is a range. Man, you got some plays. You talk about him, you talk about Day, you talk about Casey. They're all, I think, pretty solid plays. So the ownership's going to get dispersed. I don't think, you can't play everyone super popular. So maybe it's not as bad as I think it'll be. We saw him, he came out early, putter was on fire, then he went ice cold. Quicken Loans got it back. I think we've seen all the pieces. It's just a matter, can he string it together? This seems like a pretty good shot. Am I saying he's going to win? No, but at 8,900, you have some wiggle room there, and I think we see a good week at a Tiger.
The only time that I've played Tiger Woods in a DraftKings lineup so far this season was at the Players Championship, and if you hadn't put it in the water on 17 on Sunday, I probably would have won a lot more money that week. But Mike, what do we do with Tiger? Is this a week where you do play him? Because he seems like a really good fit.
I'm really torn. I'm a little concerned he's 112th in strokes gained off the tee. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that worries me a bit. And both him and Jason Day, I'm struggling, to figure out what to do with, because they both have some serious pros and cons. As Ben said, we've seen, Tiger's game in all facets at certain times. He just hasn't been able to put it all together. It's at times he's been like tantalizingly close. So I think I'll end up playing him, but for me, it's really going to come down to ownership. If he's chalky, I think he's a guy you can fade. If he's low owned, I think he's a guy that you can play. I really don't have too many strong feelings on him at the end of the day. I know that's boring, but I just don't have a handle on, how to approach him right now.
Taking the U.S. Open out of play, because again, we don't have really concrete strokes gain stats for that. But in terms of Tiger Woods, gained at the Quicken Loans, gained at the Players, lost at Memorial off the tee, gained at Wells Fargo, and he gained at the Masters off the tee as well. And before that, the places where he was losing a ton of strokes, like he lost 3.5 strokes off the tee at the Arnold Palmer, where he has had to smash driver every single time. At Memorial, it's a longer course, and he wasn't able to hit that 2-iron stinger off the tee. I think, especially if the wind does start to pick up, Tiger might just say, screw it, club down like he did at St. Andrews that year, and just hit stingers right into the middle of the fairway. At least from a game plan wise, I think that's how he's going to have to approach it this week.
Yeah, I'm just worried because it is the longest of all of the venues that the Open Championship is at. But it is good to see that the trend in strokes gained off the tee is a bit better. And then with Jason Day, he's another guy who's an enigma in terms of his adjusted strokes gain metrics. According to Data Golf Powers, our projections are really strong. At the end of the day, the scores he's putting up relative to the field, relative to the course difficulty are really strong, but how he's achieving that is kind of crazy. He's just so good around the green, on the green, but really struggles, especially in terms of approach shots. And I don't know how that's going to play on a difficult course, but then you bring in the fact that he's $8,800 and, do I really care at that point? So I think Day's a guy I'm going to be in on, especially if Paul Casey takes a ton of ownership, if Tommy Fleetwood takes ownership in the mid-9s. I think Day could come in around 10 to 15% when he really should be, I think he probably should be around 15%, but if he comes in closer to 10, I'll be excited to play him.
Yeah, I'm not super excited about Jason Day, but this entire $8,000 level starts off with Tiger, then it goes into Jason Day, then Paul Casey, like you mentioned, 87, then Molinari, Hideki, Patrick Reed, Alexander Noren, Henrik Stenson, Phil Mickelson, and Mark Leishman at $8,000. Like, when you just look at the pricing per odds, Tiger and Day obviously stick out at 25 to 1, and so does Stenson down at 82. So let's say that all three of these guys, actually, I don't think the Tiger's going to end up being super duper chalky, and I think the Day will end up coming under owned because, like you said, Casey is there, but Stenson is at $8,200. And this sort of fits what he does really well. He can take his 3-wood, he can hit it into the middle of the fairway, he can hit a lot of greens in regulation if it doesn't get too windy. He won the Claret Jug 2 years ago. He has a great British Open track record, but he did just withdraw from the Scottish Open with a wrist injury. Now, I don't know if that's a real thing or not, or if he just didn't want to play, but I have a feeling people are going to see that price, see the odds, see Henrik Stenson, that as long as the narrative doesn't get overblown that, hey, his wrist hurts too much that he can't play, I think he might be the one that soaks up all the ownership here, Ben.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what comes out. If we don't get really any word about, I'm sure we'll hear if he's playing or not, but I think that could temper the ownership. People saw that, they see him pull out. The price is good, consistent, always a great, when Mike was talking about balanced for cash in these events, he's a guy I'm certainly going to look to. This whole range, though, for me, this is my favorite range in the whole of all of them. You can really make a case for almost everyone, to be honest. I don't really like Phil, but you mentioned Stenson. I'm just going to bump up a little to Hideki. I think a guy kind of coming in under the radar. I loved him at the U.S. Open. He didn't do anything. He wasn't terrible either. But, I think quietly he's trending back to where he kind of was. The irons are good. Can always get hot, play in the wind. Doesn't mind a difficult long course. If he can keep it together off the tee here, avoid, ice cold with the putter, which you always need. I think he makes a pretty decent play at someone, with all those polarizing ownerships that might go a little underowned.
He's made 4 or 5 cuts in his career at the British Open. He's come top 23 times with 1 top 10 in that mix as well. How do you feel about Hideki, Mike? Because you're usually on Team Hideki.
Yeah, I'm on Team Hideki again. I think the ownership gets lost in the shuffle here. As you said, he's played well at the Open Championships, and he's had some better recent performances lately. I know it took him a while to get back from, I think he had a wrist injury as well. And I kept playing him through it early on when I probably should have backed off and waited a bit. But I'm on Hideki. Stenson's really interesting if that injury does affect the ownership, because if, let's say, he was fully healthy 100%, he might be the best value play in the entire field. We have him. If you look at the event history, obviously the venues rotate, but we have him as the best course history, event history at the Open Championship. We have him as someone that plays really good in tough courses. And on top of all that, we have him as one of the more underrated golfers in the world. We have him in the top 5. So you put that all together, and at $8,200, it's a phenomenal play. So it'll be interesting to track the news on the injury.
See, I just don't think we're going to hear all that much about it. And most people, if they're not watching this or pay attention to golf Twitter, they're not even going to realize that it actually happened. Like Tommy,
yeah, maybe because he withdrew. It wasn't a PGA event that he withdrew from. So I know some people might have just completely missed the news.
So I think that he ends up being it's either him or Casey. And a big thing with Stenson too, and I think this translates to Fleetwood, that they were both highly owned at the Masters and US Open, and they both played well at the Masters and US Open. So no one feels like too bummed out by ever having rostered them if they entered the Millionaire Maker, regardless if they were chalk or not. They ended up paying back their price. So why would they go anywhere different?
Yeah, there's a chance if Stenson, Casey, Fleetwood all end up like it'll be interesting to see how chalky those 3 get, because if they get really chalky, you can make a case for fading or being pretty underweight on all 3 of them, just because the alternatives are so strong. As Ben said, you can make a case for so many guys in this range. Of those guys, if they're all chalk, like Casey, you're playing in cash games. Stenson, if you think he's healthy, I think you're playing in cash games with this balanced build. But Fleetwood, I think, is the easiest to fade. Between Casey and Stenson, that's tough. But if they're both going to be mega chalk, I'll be underweight, at least in tournaments. I don't know if I've got the boldness to full fade those 2, because I do think they're, quote unquote, good chalk.
If you had to fade one of them, Ben, if it was Stenson or if it was Casey, because I'm only playing 25 lineup, so I will have to full fade one of these guys completely, just so they're not eating up ownership percentages on my other guys. And we'll get to the 2 guys that I love in this area. For me, I would fade Stenson before I would fade Casey.
Agreed. I would fade Stenson. It's obviously not a huge thing, but man, did he catch fire with that putter at the US Open. He was saving a lot there. I think his round was kind of worse than it looked. And Paul Casey's just a guy I have a tough time fading him. I think Mike's right, though. If there's really concentrated chalk, there's so many pivots. It's not like you're fading him for one guy. You have options there. It's hard to imagine that one of them at reduced ownership isn't a plus EV move. But for me, it would be Stenson fading before I fade Casey.
I guess I'll take the other side. I'll fade Casey before I fade Stenson.
All right, so the 2 guys that I love in this area, and I mean, one of them might come in with a bit higher ownership, and the other guy really should come in with a ton of ownership just because he's been so good so far this season. But Patrick Reed is right there. Obviously, he won the Masters. He came pretty close to winning the US Open as well. And when I just think of type of player that can do really well on a British Open style course, it's Patrick Reed. Like, he's not a bomber. He doesn't hit the ball super highly. He scrambles out of everything. He can get hot with the putter. He scores on par 4s. The approach has been really good, and people don't like him, so they're not going to play him. And we just talked about all the guys right around him. And then it's Alex Noren. Like, at $8,300, Stenson might be double his ownership as it sits right now. Maybe Noren ends up getting the buzz, but I think, hey, he has 6 wins on the European Tour the last 3 years. He is excellent in the wind. He has hot rounds and can go low and is highly experienced on link style courses. And I think that people will look at him and think that he's overpriced just because they see names like Stenson and Phil below him. But not for me. I'm going to be massively overweight on Reed and especially Noren.
I'm with you on Patrick Reed. I really like Patrick Reed. He's been someone that when I say I really like Patrick Reed, that's specific to this week because honestly, I've been really slow to come around on him. I wasn't on him at the Masters when he came through for Ben and Ben's Thunderdome victory there. Just someone I've been very slow to come around to. But if you look at his recent form in adjusted strokes gained last 12 months, 6 months, 2 months, he ranked 16th, 11th, and 8th. So he's trending up. He's strong over all those metrics. The 2-year form might not be as good, but for a guy like Reed, I don't mind, not completely throwing that out the window, but ignoring some of, the older data on him just because of his pedigree and his status as a golfer. And at this price tag mixed in with all these other guys, people might completely forget this is a guy that just won the Masters a few months ago. So I like Reed a lot more than Noren. I think Noren's fine, but Reed's my preference here.
Ben, do you have a take between the two?
I'm also, I'd lean Reed over Noren. I have no problem with either. I agree. Noren just won in France. Definitely prefers being in Europe. We've seen that time and time again. And I agree. I think people who just play strictly, and most people playing this probably only do play on the PGA. They don't think Noren's as good as certainly that I think, and I think as good as he really is. But yeah, Reed's a grinder. I think he's built for this type of course. If it is really tough conditions, which I think we might see, especially if it's tough weather, that's going to make this brutally hard. And he's the kind of guy who can grind. We've seen it before in the majors, obviously. And then I'm just going to throw one more out. Mark Leishman, kind of the same fit for me as Reed. He can be good with the irons, doesn't mind a difficult course, constantly under-owned, I feel like. I'm not sure where he'll fall ownership-wise here, but I don't think a lot of people are going to see the budge just because there's so many big names right around him. I think it could be a dead range, that high sevens, and he's 8K flat. So he's a guy I'm definitely going to look to this week.
Leone with Leishman, 40-1, 8K coming in, has made the cut 4 years in a row at the Open Championship with 3 top 10s in that range. Do you think that the ownership will be exceedingly low? Because it feels like we always think that with Leishman, and it ends up being slightly higher than we always think.
I think he'll be sub 10%. I don't know if you'll get him sub 5%, but with all these other names, it'll be sub 10%. Did you intentionally, not ask me about Molinari? Because we can't go a show without talking about.
I was wondering if that was going to come up. I'm not going to lie.
I wasn't letting us get to the next range without bringing up Molly.
All right, so which one of you would like to take the floor first on Molinari? Mike, I'm guessing as the official president of the Francesco Molinari fan club, it's you?
Yeah.
4th in strokes gained off the tee. This is a guy, Data Golf has 10th best golfer in the world. I think at 8,600, nobody's going to play him. I probably won't have a whole ton of Molly, but I don't think you need a whole ton to be overweight. I mean, he's going to come in sub 10. So I'll play him 10 to 15% of lineups. Maybe not a main lineup, but I do think he's deserving to be priced here, and a lot of people probably feel otherwise.
In my stats model, for full disclosure, over the past 24 rounds, Molinari ranks out 6th in this field. So I'm wondering if I should use him or not, but how much influence, Ben, do you think that his finish at the John Deere Classic will have? Let's say he wins the John Deere Classic. What's his ownership then?
Yeah, if he wins again, that could be a problem for the ownership game. But if he misses the cut, and if that happened, I would be more interested in him. I don't think this means anything in terms of how he plays at the Open, but yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. We'll see even the guys at the Scottish Open. That's certainly, we've seen Knox, who's just on this ridiculous tear. That's certainly going to affect some of these guys' ownership. I think as it stands right now, though, he is going to be the lowest owned of all these guys. And anytime you can get a world-class player, which he is, at that kind of ownership in a large field tournament, you do have to look there. Not going to have a ton, but if he might be sub 5%, that's pretty appealing.
All right, well, let's keep this quick on Phil, who's the last guy that's above $8,000. Nope.
No. Unsubscribe.
Oh, nice. A nice rounded nopes. Full fade on Phil. Let's go. $7,000 range, the very upper echelon. And there's some decent names in here, too. Brennan Grace is at $7,900. Terrell Atten is at $7,900 as well. Then you got Ian Poulter, Adam Scott, Bubba Watson, Matt Kuchar, Russell Knox, Louis Oosthuizen, Bryson DeChambeau, Rafa Cabrera Bello, Thomas Peters, Matthew Fitzpatrick, who is Anderkirst coming into the week, Patrick Cantlay, and Luke List and Shane Lowry rounded out at $7,500. For me, I have very strong feelings on Terrell Hatton and Ian Poulter. I really like both of those guys. I think when it comes down to it, for me this week, that if I'm really stuck between two guys, and I look back, I know that Kuchar and Spieth ended up coming 1-2 last year, and Phil came second to Henrik Stenson. I just always lean towards a Euro guy over an American guy if it's going to be close. So those are the two that I'm rolling with here, and I really hope they don't have awesome Scottish Opens, because Russell Knox is just going to be out of control owned, and that just shouldn't be the case at this price, Ben.
Yep, that's the curse of finding the recent form, him just making 50-footer after 50-footer last week. This is a range I just talked about how much I love those 8K guys. I don't have a lot here, to be honest. I'm with you on Hatton. I think he makes a good play. Ownership should check out. His game can set up. Obviously, his scrambling can be a little erratic at best. Other than that, though, I don't really love the fits of a lot of these guys. Obviously, Adam Scott's Adam Scott. Not in love with that. I don't like Bubba here. Usti, what can you say? I never get him right. It's very hard to gauge where he's at. He looks good, and then, the wheels fall off. I think he's a worthwhile flyer. And then, we talked about Kuchar a little throughout already. I don't know. I have a tough time with him. He's always in consideration for cash lineups for me. I'm just not sure that I really want to go there in tournaments this week.
Mike, Adam Scott has made 8 consecutive cuts at the British Open. He's Adam Scott. He's won the British Open before. Actually, no, sorry, he lost to Ernie Els at Royal Lytham. But either way, or was it Royal St. George's? I get all the Saints mixed up. But no one's going to own Adam Scott, because no one wants to go through the Open app and be like, oh, Adam Scott, 5 feet for birdie. Oh, he made bogey. Fantastic. But he might be my third favorite guy from this range.
Yeah, I think he's okay. I think thinking of more of if you're, mass multi-entering the Millie Maker type approach, if you wanted to take some really hard stances on that chalk we talked about, 8K and above, what you're going to do is just litter guys in this high 7Ks range that are going to come with really low ownership, because people aren't going to be that interested. It's going to be so easy to pivot off of them. So I don't love Scott in particular, but I do think in general in this range that you could grab 10%, 10 to 15% of a lot of these guys if you were willing to take those hard fades above them. And then that opens up some cap space and also creates a lot of leverage. I also like Brendan Grace at 7,900 quite a bit. He set the major record for round last year when he shot a 62 at the Open Championship. It was also the course record at the time. Different course this time around. But you said the tiebreaker tilt to the Euro guys. So I'm in on Brendan Grace. And also, I like Louis. If you look at his majors finishes, he's a bit of a gamer. 12 of 14 cuts the last 4 years. I think he's had 3 top 2s in that span. So I'll have some Louis as well up here.
Yeah, Grace is an interesting one for me. He ranks out top 10 in terms of scrambling gained as well against this field over the past 24 rounds, and he always gets credit as being a really good wind player. So you'll get U.S. Opens, you'll get British Opens, and he's someone that will always pop up. You don't want to be playing Brendan Grace when the winning score is going to be minus 21. So if it's going to be a difficult track, then Brendan Grace would always rate. Who do you think ends up with the most ownership in this range? Because I don't think we can go through a major without Matt Kuchar being chalky. And if accuracy is going to be something that people do look at this week, that's going to lend itself to Matt Kuchar right away, a second place finish at the Open Championship last year. So I think that he'll end up being the highest owned. And then I start thinking about it, Kuchar hasn't been playing all that well recently. Ben, do you know who has been playing really well? And I might have negative shares of him, is Bubba Watson.
Oh yeah, me too. Not in it for Bubba here. You've talked about this on the show before. Bubba's the type of guy where he excels, play him, and where he hates it, just don't. He's pretty straightforward with what he likes to do. He loves some courses, hates some others, and I don't think this is really the great spot for him. He is playing well, obviously, but I'm looking elsewhere. Not for me.
If we look at these names, Mike, who do you think are the 3 guys that come out the highest in my statistical model this week?
Well, I know Bryson's coming out pretty high in your model.
Yes, Bryson is the highest, yes.
I'll go out and say Luke List, because you love Luke List. He's in this range, right?
Yeah, he is. But it's not him. It's Ian Poulter is the next guy. Patrick Cantlay is after him. He ranks 18th over the past 24 rounds. The around the green game has been really good. The scrambling game, not so hot. And this is a place that has pot bunkers, and Patrick Cantlay can't hit it out of a regular bunker, so maybe he just takes his medicine and that's the best thing that ever happened to him. But it seemed like we were all so hyped for Patrick Cantlay to begin the year, and that has just gone away. What do we do with him? Like, could he come in sub 5%?
I don't think so. I think he actually ends up relatively chalky. If you look at the breakdown in a lot of metrics, tee to green, off the tee, just strokes gained in general, even though it feels like we, for me, I haven't benefited or profited off of him despite being hyped on him. He's had a pretty solid season. And I think at 7,500, if you look at his odds, they're pretty decent as well. I think he's going to carry some ownership in this range. I think him and Bryson could end up the chalkiest behind Kuchar.
Are you in or out on Bryson, Peters, or Fitzpatrick, Ben?
Yeah, what happened to Peters in life? My God. Every time I see him, he's either made a double-digit number or he's snapped another club. Out of those guys, Bryson in, Fitzy
out.
Yeah, I think out, even though I like him. Peters in if I can get him at like 2 or 3%, but he is a gamble on top of a gamble. The guy is not playing well, and he's very likely to blow up.
All right, well, if you're going to take a gamble, because I know, well, in your Masters Millionaire Maker second place finish, Mike, Peters was in that lineup, right?
Yes, he was.
So you're playing my guy against your guy. For this week, if you could take one that was, I can tell you they were both 3%, would you take Peters or would you take Luke List?
I would take Luke List.
So would I. Ben?
Peters.
Yeah, that's a wrong answer.
No, give me all the time. The Belgium, they're hurting from the World Cup loss. He's going to carry him home, him and Colsarts. I don't know. Luke, you don't worry about him over there. I know the around the green has been very, improved for a while now, but I am really interested to see him handle these type of bunkers and, potentially a lot of scrambling opportunities over there.
I just think where he's so good off the tee, like if you compare the two against each other, like they both have the potential to finish dead last in this tournament and break a whole series of clubs. But I just look at the way that List has peaked this year versus Peters, and at least the top end finishes have been near the top of the leaderboard. Like Peters' best finishes are like T30.
Yeah, no, this is accurate. Peters is he's really not playing well. I'm still a sucker for those flashes, the upside. He can just get so hot with his irons. He's going to have to keep it steady off the tee. Obviously, if he's sitting at a fescue, it's going to be a quick week for him. But I don't love Luke List in the spot. I think that he's going to have some issues around the green.
I'll end up playing Luke List because I can't go a week without playing Luke List. I'm using him in my DraftKings Scottish Open lineup. And I don't even know anything about the Scottish Open. I'm like, hey, Luke List, gotta play this tournament. So you can take my objectivity out of it. If you don't think he's a good play, don't play him. But I do think that he does have some upside. And we look at some of the other windier courses and tighter places like the Honda and the Heritage. That's where he did spike earlier. He hasn't really been good since. So maybe the form is completely gone. Maybe the swing season is the time to get back in on Luke List. But I'll have, 10% exposure and just hope that it works out. And even if he misses the cut, maybe he'll eagle a few par fives. Who knows? But before we get out of this range, in the $7,000 area, who are your two favorite plays, Mike?
I'll go with throw it to Ben first. I need a second.
All right. Okay, you guys gather your thoughts. I'll start with me. I've already said it. My two favorite plays from this area are going to be Tyrrell Hatton and Ian Poulter. Get the two Brits in your lineup and you'll be good to go. I'll have very minimal shares of Luke List, but I will be playing Bryson as well. So Ben, who are your two favorite plays?
Not my favorite range, but I'm going to go with Bryson and Usti, who take that for what you will.
Mike, have you composed yourself yet?
I've composed I think Cantlay is the best play, straightforward. As far as ownership upside for GPP, I'll go with Grace.
All right, so we've already talked about everything above $7,500, who our favorite plays are from there, but you need to start sprinkling in some guys that are maybe lower owned or super lowly priced. We like to call them sleepers because people search sleepers and click on things that have sleepers. So here are mine, Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, and Rick Gaiman's best sleepers for the British Open. What always happens at the British Open? There's an old dude near the top of the leaderboard. So if you're going to invest in a classic model, let it be Stuart Sink at 6,600. He's gained strokes on approach in 13 consecutive tournaments and averaging over 7 strokes tee to green in his past 3 starts. Good for a second, 4th and 23rd in those outings. Plus, he's gaining an incredible amount of fairways against the field lately too. Oh, and he won this event before and was tied for 6th at Carnoustie in 2007. The conditions, they won't faze him. His putter is always a weakness, but if we get an average week on the greens, Sink will be one of the most valuable commodities below $7,000. Rick, who's your sleeper?
For my sleeper, I'm locking in Andy Sullivan, who has been playing on the European Tour almost exclusively in the last 2 years. That tells me that he's going to be comfortable with the course conditions, the style of play that we get this week, which not a lot of other guys can say, and his results are really proving that. 5 top 10s in his last 7 starts on the Euro Tour, and he's made 3 straight cuts in his Open Championship history, including a 12th place finish in 2016. Give me Andy Sullivan to hopefully fly under the radar a bit.
Reed.
For my sleeper, I'm going to go with Andy Sullivan at $7,200. Look, this guy doesn't play at all on the PGA Tour, so he's not going to be popping in your stat models, and that's why I really like him here. If you look at his past finishes since the Omega in Dubai, his worst finish is a T35. With strokes gained tee to green, he's 35th. Strokes gained off the tee, he's 9th, and he's 13th in bogey avoidance on the Euro Tour. He's got a 21st at the H&A, and he's got a 6th at the Irish Open with 3 consecutive made cuts, as well as a top 15 in 2016. Look to Andy Sullivan to return value as my sleeper for this week.
Jeff.
Pat, my sleeper pick for this year's Open Championship is the man they call Thunder Bear, Thorbjorn Olesen. Give me some Thorbjorn at $7,200. I'll let everyone else play Zach Johnson or Webb Simpson or all the Americans at that price, but Thorbjorn is in the absolute form of his life right now. He just beat Francesco Molinari in his home country in Italy about a month ago. Also shot 61 in the final round in Germany, T6 in his last start at the Irish Open, and he's a fantastic links player too. Won the 2015 Alfred Dunhill Links Championship, which is partially played at Carnoustie, by the way. I think he's a great value for DFS, brings the upside this week for sure. 100 to 1 in the betting odds too, by the way, but he is definitely my sleeper pick for this year's Open.
Now you've heard who some of my favorite or my favorite sleeper is and some other sleepers from around the industry. Let's talk about below $7,500 down to $7,000. And we'll start with Xander Schauffele, who leads this area right now. He's at $7,400. He's followed down the list by Martin Keimer, who, people are just going to like. Paul Dunn, Daniel Berger, Kiradech Appy Barnrat, Brant Snedeker, Chris Wood, Hao Tong Lee, who you talked about it earlier, Mike, about Brendan Grace firing these rounds. Hao Tong had the round to get himself and win someone $1 million last year on Sunday. Webb Simpson, Tony Finau, Zach Johnson, Andy Sullivan's down here, Danny Willett's down here. Where is your first look going to be, Mike, if you tell me it's not Tony Finau?
Okay, I was going to say, who my first look's going to be. It's going to be Tony Finau. But if it's not Tony Finau, I think Webb Simpson's played really well. I think that's a good pivot off of Finau. Somewhat concerned that his strokes gained off the tee is 132nd this year. But in terms of the golf that he's put together overall the past 6 months or so, I think he's a strong pivot. But Finau is, I wonder how much chalk he's going to be, because I was stunned when I saw the price tag.
Well, it's going to be difficult because the two guys right in that area, Finau is going to be incredibly popular and Zach Johnson is going to be incredibly popular. So, Ben, are you going to use either one of them, both, or do you have a preference between the two?
Prefer Finau. I'll be using him. I have almost no interest in ZJ. Andy Sullivan's a guy that I'm going to be on. Definitely not going to be popular, playing well, playing over in Europe. I think he sets up pretty well for the course, not going to be popular. And that's the kind of guy, if there is a couple concentrated ownership as we work down, that I'm going to look to pivot to. And then Sneds, I've been waiting. I can't get him right. I jump on, he plays horrible. I jump off, he shows the form that I thought he was going to have. So I hope that trend doesn't continue, but I think this is a good fit for him. Obviously, doesn't mind a long course, can scramble really well, always pretty solid, out of the bunkers and whatnot. And again, not someone I expect to be overly popular down here. So I think there are viable pivots off someone like Finau, who I agree. The price is just certainly a little alarming.
Well, what do we do with it then, Mike? As we look back at the U.S. Open and the chalk of all chalk lineups hit, and people are like, fading ownership is stupid. Just take the best plays. And Finau looks like he is the best play.
Yeah, and you just want to be careful that you we've talked about this before. Ben in particular has made good points on this. You can play some chalk, but you got to deviate elsewhere. I think the guy who won the Masters, Millionaire too, talked about this. He had a lineup that had a few chalky pieces, but he was just cognizant of the overall lineup not being over a certain amount of projected ownership, and it worked out for him. So I still think you can play Finau. It just depends how outrageous it is. I feel like whenever we get chalk in this low sevens, high sixes, that for whatever reason, people, when they're making multiple lineups, seem to pivot there more so than they do in the mid tier. And as a result, these guys that you could see getting 25+% end up like 15%-ish, which I'm totally happy being overweight on Finau and making him a core play if he's 15%. Once you get to 25% or more, I mean, that's difficult. We've got him with around a 16% chance to top 10. So if you're playing a Million Maker, for example, and he was a guy that you made as a core play, like you need that 16% chance to hit. So if that 16% chance hits, do you really want to be competing against 30% of the other lineups? I don't think you do if he's that high. If he's 15%, then I'm fine with it. So I'm really hoping that it just gets spread out enough down here. I don't know if it will, though.
I actually don't mind Zach Johnson or Tony Finau. I'm going to have to make a really strong decision because I don't think that you can play both of them. I'm kind of with you on Snedeker, though, Ben. Like, it seems like his game has finally turned around. It was this spot last year where he withdrew and didn't play in the Open Championship. But before that, everyone kind of liked him going in because, hey, is it going to be windy? Yeah, well, Brandt Snedeker is really good in the wind. Can he scramble? Yeah. Can he putt, especially from long distances on these like 80-foot putts? Yeah, he's incredibly good at that. So I think about Brandt Snedeker, the overall stats aren't going to look great, but he was pretty lights out at Greenbrier. And I know that's not similar to this course in any sort of way, but it was nice to see him gain in all facets of the game, tee to green. It seemed like, 1 week his irons would be on, but he couldn't drive the ball, or he could drive the ball and all of a sudden he couldn't chip. But it seemed like last time out, he really got it back altogether. So I think I'm going to be in on Sneds. Mike, can you get behind that?
Yeah, I think you're behind Snedeker. That's a guy our models, like all season long, and he's performed like just well enough to stay up there. And then the longer term form has sort of anchored him in there. But as you said, it's starting to look better that you got to see him do everything well finally. So I'm in on Snedeker. I also like, I always like Ben On, but his, ball striking, especially off the tee, is really strong. He's got good distance. So Ben On's another guy here in the low sevens. And I think there's just a handful of guys you can play here. Which makes it, somewhat unique, I feel like, to, other tournaments where I felt like there were only like 2 or 3 that I really felt good. And even as we dip into the like 7K and under, there's some guys there that I'm totally fine deploying, even in like a 3 max single entry type setting.
Well, I think I have a lot more interest outside of the main guys in the sub $7,000 level than I do of the guys in this lower $7,000. Like statistically, when I look at it, the guys that rate out the best, Webb Simpson comes in number 17. When I rate people out, Tony Finau is number 20. And then after that, it's Kevin Na, who's 15th, and Peter Uihlein, who's 26th. And I don't know if I want to play, Na coming off a win. Like, I don't know how that's going to work out for him. And then Uihlein, I'm always torn on them. But Ben, you like Uihlein, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. On Uihlein, he's a guy who's played in Europe extensively, playing good. We saw him struggle early in the year. He's starting to get it together, playing much better. Just had a good showing at the Irish Open. We'll see what he does in Scotland. I obviously don't want him to gain much traction, but I think he can handle this course. Really good putter, good off the tee. Around the green, another one. You worry, but that you're going to have to deal with that. Everyone's going to be scrambling from these bunkers. People are going to make mistakes. At a flat K7 price tag, I have no problem taking a shot with him. He's going to be nothing more than, a handful of guys that I mix and match here. Like, Benny On's another one that Mike just mentioned. Certainly see the merit to playing him as well.
So with Uihlein, he's actually 5th in scrambling gained over the past 24 rounds. And the around the green numbers aren't great, but it seems like he's recouping when he needs to. If he can get his putter rolling, like you mentioned, he's played, basically before this season extensively on the European Tour and had a lot of success over there. So he's sort of an American that you can give a lean to as more of a European style player just because he has experience on these type of tracks. So I could be talked into Uihlein here. I just hope he doesn't spike at the Scottish Open. Then everyone in the world is going to be on Uihlein. The sneaky one here, and he's been just playing awful but he made the cut at the U.S. Open, and I was like, what's going on here? And in 2007, had a top 20 at this course, and he's actually a much better player now than he was then, and he did predict himself to win all 4 majors this season. Now, he's 0 for 2, so he can get one with the claret jug, but Mike, please tell me your thoughts on my main man, smoking cigs, Pat Perez.
No, I'm off Pat Perez. I had enough fun on that ride for a while this year, and it didn't end very well for me. I just don't think he has the upside that you need here. I know at the U.S. Open, we were talking about guys that, hey, if they sneak into the top 20, you're really happy, and you can have these guys with, they make the cut and they just, grind out like a meh performance, and you can win with that. I don't think you can win with that with some of the upside names down here. So I like someone like Daniel Berger, who was 6th at the U.S. Open. I know he got like an insane benefit from when he teed off that. I think it was that 3rd round when it played like super hard for everybody, but basically the guys that went out when he went out. But even still, the top 10 finish there, I think shows his upside, and I like his game, even though I know he hasn't, outside of that top 10 finish, done that well this season.
Yeah, I did lose a lot of money betting against Daniel Berger with you guys when I took Keegan Bradley against him. I would recommend no one ever.
That wasn't even a sweat, Pat.
yeah,
I feel like you got to run it back with someone. You got to run it back with someone.
Yeah.
Well, who am I going to run it back with? Like, none of us seem to like any one guy outside of Finau from down here. I like Perez, but I don't love him.
Yeah.
So, what are you really going to do? I'm just trying to see. What do you make?
We could go Luke List versus somebody.
Oh, Luke List versus who was the guy that you liked? Luke List or Thomas Peters?
Yeah, I'll take you guys on that. Sure.
Yeah. Well, all right. I'll be on Pat's side. I'll take List over Peters.
All right.
We'll find another one. I do have there's a few sneaky names. You mentioned Andy Sullivan. He comes in pretty low. I have no real take on Kevin Chappell or Brian Harmon at this event, or Jordan L. Smith. I don't really love him, but Jorge Campillo, a guy who hits an immense amount of fairways on the European Tour. And you can't look at European Tour leaderboards without seeing my main man Jorge up there. I think I might have a few shares. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy, God, he can't find the winner's circle. Not that you need that in a situation like this, but he's a good player. I do worry, this is a step up, obviously, in terms of the talent and whatnot. Ownership's going to be non-existent, so you can look there. I thought the guy, when you said he made the U.S. Open, I thought you were going to Chappell there, and I was dreading talking about him. I don't think I can do that, but yeah, I do think there are some guys that we're not used to seeing, obviously, in the U.S. that have some merit to be played here and have some upside. Campillo being one of them.
Well, the other 3 would be Chris Wood, Paul Dunn, and Thorbjorn Olesen, all who are very steady European Tour players. Chris Wood is really peaking right now. Olesen shows up like once every 6 months and storms the gates and wins an event, and then you just don't hear from him for ages. So do you have interest in those guys? Because it seems like they could, I don't want to say that they're going to be chalk because they're not going to be, but I think amongst people who play 100 lineups and 150 lineups, those are 3 names that are going to be populated throughout a lot of them.
I'm not really on these guys, honestly. Our initial finish probabilities have all 3 of them with a sub 60% chance to make the cut. And a handful of guys we already talked about are more in like that 65 to high 60s range in terms of percentage odds to make the cut. So I'm sticking with those guys, especially as we keep alluding to, when you go to sub 7K, you've got another handful of names that probably has just as good of a chance to give you a top 20 type of finish, and you're going to save a bit more money. So, I don't think you need to expand your net to like 10 guys in this low 7K range. And they don't make my top 5 or 6, not even, super close on the fringe there either.
Ben, are you in on those guys? And I'll throw Haotong into that mix too.
Not really. The one guy, Chris Wood, I think is a cut above the rest. That's a guy I'm going to have exposure to. You said trending upward, and I think he has the game to handle a course like this.
Yeah, I mean, his stats don't really bear it out when you look at what he's done on the PGA Tour. But if you look at his European numbers, then you'll see he's someone who hits an incredible amount of fairways. It's funny, I mentioned in the Open that the British Open always has like this 17-year-old British dude who comes out of nowhere and you're like, man, this guy is the next big thing. I remember when it was Justin Rose. I remember when it was Rory at Carnoustie last time around. And then there was a year when it was Chris Wood. And like back-to-back years, Chris Wood just handles these conditions, plays really well on links courses. I think for me, Chris Wood will be the only one I'm going to play. I played Ross Fisher at the U.S. Open. No Ross Fisher this time. I'll be in on Chris Wood.
Yep, right with you.
So, Mike, one sleeper from down here. You got any? Or are we going to the sixes?
Let's go to the sixes.
All right, so we'll go to the sixes, but I do think it's important, because we just briefly talked about ownership, is getting a gauge on ownership. Just don't play six really, really chalky guys. So here are the guys that I think are going to be the most owned in this year's British Open DraftKings Millionaire Maker. Check back Tuesday for the full Millionaire Maker DraftKings British Open ownership show. But on first look, methinks Tommy Fleetwood could push 25% ownership. He's been a factor at both majors this year and sported high ownership each time. So no one's going to feel scorned. He's got the British narrative working for him, and he's a very reasonable $9,400, making him comparable with one of the plus 10K guys. He might hit 30%. Then there's Henrik Stenson, winner of the 2016 Claret Jug and master of hitting the fairway. He's only $8,200. The only thing which may keep ownership off of him is a wrist injury, which caused him to pull out of the Scottish Open. But from all accounts, it doesn't seem super serious. Unless the injury narrative gets a media blitz early in the week, Stenson's going to top 20%. So, those are my two top ownership guesses. Reed, who do you think the people are going to pick?
One of my predictions for the highest owned guy, or one of the highest owned guys, is going to be Justin Rose. I'm thinking around 25%, and rightfully so. Great current form coming into the Open Championship. He's got a 6th in 2015 at the Open Championship, and he's just been playing really well at the majors this season and already has 2 victories. What I would have liked to see in a little bit is that he played in one of these Euro Tour tournaments like the HNA, or maybe the Irish Open, but as the overall 3rd-ranked golfer in the world, I'm not too worried, but 25% will be my prediction for Justin Rose. One of my next predictions for one of the highest owned guys at the Open Championship is going to be Emiliano Grillo. Look, he's sub 7K pricing. His current form is fantastic. He shouldn't be priced down there, but he is. And we're going to get value for that. And a lot of people are going to see that. So he's probably going to be about 25+% owned in my estimation. Over the last 24 rounds, strokes gained tee to green, he's top 20, and he's top 5 in fairways gained in that same time frame. He had a 12th at 2016, or in 2016 at Royal Troon, and is the 54 ranked golfer in the world. So at sub 7K, you're getting a fantastic talent, a guy who's got great current form, and so look to him to be pretty high owned at the Open Championship.
Jeff?
Pat, from the high end, the player I think could garner really high ownership this week is going to be Francesco Molinari at 8,600. And there's some pretty good reasons for that. I mean, he top 5s pretty much every event he plays these days. He's really improved his all-around game, but with the injury issues creeping up on Henrik Stenson, the fact this is a major championship over in Europe where I think people are going to feel comfortable rostering Francesco, I feel like he's going to garner a lot of ownership at just 8,600. From the lower end, I'm looking at Zach Johnson at 7,200 being very popular. Did you know that Zach Johnson has never missed a cut at the Open Championship since 2007? You're going to hear that a lot this week, I think. He's a former Open winner as well. He offers a nice floor, some good upside because he is actually in pretty good form as well, so I understand it. But Francesco Molinari, Zach Johnson, look for higher ownership on those 2 players this week.
Rick?
There's a few guys that I expect to garner a lot of ownership this week, and the first one is Brooks Koepka. It's no secret that he's been absolutely awesome, obviously defending his U.S. Open crown in a big way. Puts him on the radar for a lot of casual and serious owners this week. And he's priced to move at only $9,200. He has the same odds to win as guys who are $1,000 more expensive to him. With soft pricing this week and with DraftKings on all their majors, you're going to see Koepka in a ton of lineups. The other name you're going to see a lot is Francesco Molinari. There's really nothing we love more in the Open Championship than rostering a scorching hot European player. yes, that's what you get in Molinari, who is unconscious right now. He's running away with golf tournaments. He's leading almost like every strokes gained category recently, no matter how you slice it up. He's scorching hot. He's under $9,000. He's a Euro Tour player, which, believe it or not, is going to matter this week because you're going to see a big increase in ownership for those guys. So that's a combination that is going to say Molinari is likely going to be one of the highest owned players on the slate.
Let's close us off with the sub $6,000 level. And as we talked about, if we're going to play some stars and scrubs, you're going to need to drop down into this level. Fortunately, it's not as dire as it's been in most of the majors so far this season. There's legit guys down here now. There's 156 players in the field, so there's a lot of names. But when you're dealing with something like the British Open, at least in my mind, you can play some of these older names because you always see them not necessarily at the top of the leaderboard by Sunday, but they're in the mix. So I'm going to start with my favorite guy. I mentioned him under the sleeper portion, but I love Stuart Sink this week. He's a former Open Championship winner. He was 6th last time at Carnoustie, and he comes in with a 2nd, a 4th, and a top 25 in his past 3 starts. Like, he hits fairways, he hits solid approaches. The only part of his game that sucks is his putting, but if you look at him in 3-putt avoidance, he's not so bad all of a sudden, and lag putting, he's quite good too. I know he's an old man, and I know that he's not necessarily going to be super popular. I bet him at 400 to 1, already down to 300 to 1, so trending in the right direction in terms of the odds. But I think for $6,600 that he's going to be a core player of mine down here. Is that nuts, Leone?
It's not. It's a little bit nuts, I think. I think core player is strong. I think he's somebody that can be in your mix. You know what, though? I always refer to him as old player. He's not like crazy old. I think he's like 44. I feel like he's a decade older than that. Maybe it's just the look about him. But I was really surprised he didn't go with Siwoo at 6,500.
Well, I mean, there's no way that I can't have just a little bit of Siwoo, depending on how he does this week at the John Deere as well, because I'm playing some Siwoo at the John Deere Classic. And any time that Siwoo plays well, like, oh, $6,500 Siwoo, I just think for win equity purposes alone that he might be last in this field, but if he does make the cut, he could go on like a Haotong type run like last year, and you get him at $6,500. Like, he's won the Players Championship. He's won the Wyndham. Like, there's no reason for him to be this low. It's just he's so volatile that he tilts everyone. Ben, what do you think about Sink and C? Woo!
You know, I never play Siwoo, and then I finally said at the Quicken Loans, you know what, I'm going to play this guy. And through 30 holes, it was great, and then he just missed the cut in spectacularly bad fashion. Sink, I get where you're coming from. Yeah, I mean, I'm with Leone in the sense Tom Watson was old. Like, when Sink took him down, that's where we're getting old. But yeah, Sink can play. Obviously, we've seen the putter. It's not great, but it can get hot. We saw it a couple weeks ago. And you're talking 6,600. That's pretty ridiculous in terms of a price just to get a guy that we know can grind through a cut and have a fine finish here. I prefer to go up a little more. I think that, you know, obviously Grillo is going to be, I think, pretty popular. You know, he did miss the cut at the U.S. Open, missed it on the number, but it's hard to ignore him at that price tag, sub 7. And then there's just a pack, even just $100 more than Sink. I'll just throw a couple names out. You got CH3, Wiesberger, and Ryan Moore, all just quality players in my book. You know, I'm not sure how well the course fits them. We'll have to see with the draws. Those are going to be secondary factors that I factor in. I'm probably not going to play all of them, but guys I haven't crossed off just yet.
I think there's a chance that Wiesberger may have withdrawn with a wrist injury.
All right. Well, he's probably not going to make my teams then. But the other two, pending that they have fully functional wrists, will guys I'm going to look to. I mean, CH3, I've been playing him so much.
I'm not playing CH3, but I will tell you this as something that's more in depth to what I'm up to here. CH3, he's just going to be, like you say, Grillo's going to be chalky. CH3 will be, I don't say equally as chalky, but he's going to carry a lot of ownership down here because people play him every single week, and they'll play him at 8,600, not 6,700. So 6,700 is looking like a great number right now, but Ryan Moore rates out second in my model, which maybe my model is wrong.
I hope not.
We've got Howell and Moore around a 70% chance to make the cut. And I mentioned in the like low 7s, we had a bunch of guys around 65% chance. So you can dip down, get these two guys. And, you know, maybe if you don't think they're good course fits or whatever, it's not quite that high, but just based on the talent they've shown relative to the field, I think you really want them in your mix. Russell Henley's another guy that we have basically, top 30 in adjusted strokes gained by each time frame pretty consistently there. So, I mean, there are a lot of guys you can dig to here, which is part of the reason I think you can go a bit more studs and duds. And I'm just really interested to see what the field does, because you can still make those mega balanced lineups that you made at the Masters, that you made at US Open, but the competing studs and duds lineups are going to pack a little bit more punch, especially on the back end, than they did in those two tournaments.
You hit on a key name, and it was Russell Henley. I really like Russell Henley as well. I think he is the logical pivot if Griot's ownership gets too out of control, and I want to gauge that. And again, next week, your buddy Drewby and Logan Harper from fansharesports.com will be joining me to break down what the ownership is so we can figure out who really is the chalk down here. And as it's played out so far at the majors, when you start getting into like the $6,000 chalk, frankly, Ben, it just hasn't panned out.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation where I was scrolling through and I looked, and then it kind of caught my eye with Henley. It was just like, whoa, I'm kind of surprised he's down here, playing really well, had some good finishes. He's good at the Masters, and it's hard to really ignore that. So I will play the ownership game. And again, I know we keep saying this, but this is where correlated lineups, weather draws, things like that will come into play when I'm talking about how much exposure. I know I'm going to play some of these guys, but some may get 35% of my lineup, some may get 10%, and that's just going to depend on some of those secondary factors.
So I'm in on Russell Henley. I'm in on Kyle Stanley at this venue too. And if we talk about correlated lineups, there's guys that aren't going to get themselves into beaucoup trouble. They're just going to hit it out there, put it in the fairway, and they score really well on par fours. So I'm in on that. Ryan Moore, like you mentioned, I'm in on him. Stuart Sink, obviously I love. And there's two guys right around Stuart Sink, both at $6,600, who sort of fit this theme as well. One is Austin Cook, who hits fairways and is an excellent scrambler and plays really well on par fours. Mike, I need to get your take on my main man, Ryan Armour.
I was going to say, these are the two guys that we have as playable down here besides Sink. So I think they're fine. I think there's a substantial gap between them and, the Henley Moore CH3 that we've mentioned. But if you're mass multi-entering the Millie Maker, I think a strategy where you're just spreading out over a bunch of guys here makes sense, which is something that did not make sense the previous two tournaments.
So, Ben, what about those two guys? And I'll throw in another oldie if you want. How about some Retief Goosen?
Oh, the Goose. I'm not sure I can get there, to be honest. This is not a spot where I'm looking to mix and match. I haven't obviously built yet, but I think I'm comfortable with kind of those, I don't want to say chalky guys down here, but this is going to be a spot. I just want to go back and touch upon this. Mike mentioned it, and I totally agree. You don't have to fade all the chalk. If you make a big stand, say in the Fleetwood Stinson range, then you can play the Henleys and Griots down here if you think they're going to be chalky, because you have a natural differentiation point elsewhere in your lineup. So this is one, I don't see as many pivots off those guys. I do have one absolute bomb down here. Could be sub 1%, and it's Alexander Bjork, a guy I really like to play in Europe, just playing well consistently. Have no idea how he's going to handle playing in something like this, but the form is there, and he's just a guy I do like to play. Only 6,800, which is probably where he should be. He probably should be lower, to be honest. Just a crazy bomb pivot off those guys.
Well, if we're talking about some of the Euro guys down here, I think finding a key Euro, like Matthew Southgate is an excellent links player. We saw him pop at St. Andrews a few years ago. He was in the mix for a while, he and Paul Dunn, until they ended up going away because he was Matthew Southgate. But now he's been on tour for a while, on the European tour. He's been a pro. I think he's someone you can give consideration to. Cole Sertz is just a really good links player, and he judges the wind by he holds up his cigarette to see which way it's going. So it's the most accurate way, people, that you can measure which way the wind is going when you're playing in the British Open. So Cole Sertz I actually like better than Peters. If you want like a low Belgium bet, that's probably the move. And there was one more that I was looking at too. Alexander Levy, the Frenchman. Mike, do you have any interest in any of these Euros? Because I think, like I mentioned earlier, if we're splitting the difference between your Jason Duffners of the world and things like that, or you wanted to play CH3, I think I would just rather lean Euro guy.
I don't know if I agree with that overall sentiment, but I do think that of the guys you mentioned and that Ben mentioned, that Bjork's probably the best guy to take a chance on. That's the guy our data likes substantially better than the rest of the guys who really seem like they're pretty big long shots. Now, sometimes on some of these Euro players, we don't have as much data. It's a bit difficult to pin down an accurate baseline on them, but still where we have them ranked, you would need to manually boost them quite a bit to get them into the playable guys. And because we've got 5 or 6 guys sub 7K that we like, and we're calling them chalky, but if you think Finau's big chalk, you think Grillo's big chalk, you think a lot of people make balanced lineups, well, the pivots, you don't have to go very far down the line to get someone that's pretty low owned is the way I view it. And going back to making a chalky lineup, like I don't think you should use Grillo and Finau in very many of the same lineups. I think these are 2 guys that are really good values, and at their price tags, again, unless they get insane chalk, I'm willing to eat 15 to 20% on them. If they get up to 25 to 30, that's a different conversation. But just don't pair them together. At least don't do it very often if you want to be unique.
A few final guys here. EVR Eric van Rooyen, the South African, who I just always assumed was Dutch. He just happens to happen the Afrikaner name. So he's someone T to green that is actually really good, and he kind of popped a little bit a few weeks ago at 6,700. He's going to come in with like 1% ownership. I feel like he's sort of like the Luke List of the European Tour in the way that like DFS people really like to play him, and then he makes a whole bunch of birdies and eventually takes himself out of the mix. But I think he's intriguing from a birdie making perspective because let's say we get conditions that are pretty clear. Like this course could play a lot easier than we're all expecting, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's very viable. And that's a guy, I'm glad you brought that up, because he's a guy, if it is calm, he can go low. If you're talking about some people down here, Colsaerts to me is the same way. If it looks like it's going to be a grinded out, bogeys in certain circumstances are okay. Those are not the guys I want. But if it's very calm and guys end up attacking a little more, you could look to someone like that. He did play really well last week. The Irish Open, another deep flyer for a tournament like the Millie Maker.
All right, Mike, what about EVR or Ryan Fox, who made the cut at the U.S. Open, actually played quite well at the U.S. Open, and does tend to do better on Linksy-style courses?
I'm going to go with Ryan Fox of those 2. We've got Fox with nearly a 60% chance to make the cut, which is pretty strong down here and much better than EVR. So I'll go with Fox between those 2.
All right, last guy, because we didn't bring him up. I'm just throwing out Kevin Kisner because I don't know what the hell's going on with his game. Maybe if Cam Smith peaks at the Scottish Open and flashes some form, you can get back on him because theoretically he should be a really good fit for this course, but his game has just been in the tank since the Masters in ET5. But the name is Jimmy Walker. If he can figure out how to get the ball into the fairway everywhere else in terms of his game, he rates out really, really well. And now maybe the buzzer going off is telling me that I probably shouldn't play Jimmy Walker. But still, like par 4 scoring, these long par 4s, scrambling. In this field, he is number 1 around the green in terms of the past 24 rounds. He's number 1 in scrambling gained as well. Could Jimmy pull it out here? Because he's a big event player.
There's a few guys down here I don't know what to do with that are like on the cusp of making my list. I just don't know how deep I want to go depending on how many balanced lineups I mix. But Jimmy Walker's in there, Jason Hadley's in there, Duffner's in there, Kisner's in there that are just sort of like this second tier sub 7K. But I do think it's a tournament where you can use 2 guys sub 7K. We've been scrambling in some other tournaments just to find one guy that we think's worth playing down here. But I don't mind making some lineups where you go pretty studs and duds and you take 2 guys from down here.
Walker, Ben?
I don't know if I can get on board with him. It's just not happening. Every time I start to buy in, we see kind of what you talked about. It's just spraying all over the place. Talented, sure. It's going to be, you're going to be able, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, take a handful of these guys, as deep flyers. I'm not sure that he's going to be one of them for me. I think I lean also to maybe some of the Euro guys like Fox. I would rather have him than Jimmy Walker.
All right. That's the entire field. Those are the guys we like, but we need to find out who you guys especially like. So we'll go to you first, Mike. Give me your pick to hoist the clear jug.
It's kind of boring, but I'm going to go with Justin Rose. I just think the way he's played over the last 2 years, this combination of recent form, I'm going to, I think that's just the guy that you want to take. Without going super chalky with DJ, give me Rose.
Ben, pick to win.
I'm going to go with Hideki. Picked him for the U.S. Open, and I am going to stick to it. I think that this is another time where if he can get in contention, get good conditions for him, we could see him break through.
All right. Who am I picking to win the British Open? Well, you probably already know that, but hey, let's find out who myself and like 20 other people think is going to win. Stay tuned. time to pick a winner. And as you probably know by now, I'm taking Dustin Johnson. He's the #1 player in the world, hasn't missed an open cut since 2009, and is sneakily one of the best win players in the world. He's piled up 3 top 10s in a row entering Karnowski, and has 2 wins on the year and rates out tops in the field in strokes gained tee to green, ball striking, and total over the past 50 rounds. He's the favorite, and he's got the best chance to win by a substantial margin. Now, I've rounded up all the top names from around the golf industry to give their picks. And we'll start with the man, the best pick so far this season, the Gup, from gupscorner.com and the Smash Factor podcast.
Thanks, Pat. Let's see if we can keep this heater on a roll with the British Open, or the Open, as some call it. I'm going to go a little bit on maybe a somewhat sleeper side, and I'm going to take the bot, Hideki Matsuyama. Hasn't played much recently, but a T13, T16 his last 2 events out. In the British Open, he's done well. He missed the cut in 2016. Outside of that, he's T40 the other 4 the last 5 years, and T23 of those. A little bit off the base. I definitely will be on him big in DraftKings at 8,500, but I think he's going to be my pick to win the tournament. Thanks, Pat.
Joe House from the Ringers Shack House podcast.
Yo, Pat Mayo, it's Joe House on the world-famous Shack House podcast. You have asked for my 2018 Open Championship selection. I have something delicious for you. After going with my gut at the U.S. Open and getting clowned by Clown Pants, Phil Mickelson, I'm ready to go back to the data. I know you like the data. Take that for data, Pat Mayo. How about some data points? Only 2 of the last 13 winners did not have a links victory to their name before their Open Championship win. 12 of the past 13 winners of the Open Championship had at least a top 6 in a previous Open before their victory. 11 of the past 14 winners had a victory in the year they lifted the claret jug. 1 top 8 in 1 of their 6 events leading up to the Open. We're looking for gentlemen in form. There are a handful of outstanding selections that fit this criteria, but there is only 1 gentleman, Pat Mayo, who has the most links wins out of any golfer in the field since 2010. This gentleman has won on links courses 4 times since 2010. He has 4 top 3 finishes in 2018. He is the winner of the French Open. My selection for the 2018 Open Championship, a gentleman who's been knocking on the door. It's Alex knocking, Alex Noren.
Pat Perry from the Tour Junkies podcast.
Well, Pat, my pick to win the Open Championship is going to be Ricky Fowler. I absolutely think he should be a core play in GPP and cash lineups. He's coming in good recent form, and he's a guy who has performed consistently well year over year at the Open Championship and had a second place finish just a few years ago. So Ricky Fowler will be your 2018 Champion Golfer of the Year.
Rick Gaiman.
My pick to win is Jason Day, and it's just an added bonus that he is criminally underpriced on DraftKings at only $8,800. I can't wrap my head around this because he has shown us that he can absolutely dominate difficult courses. He's won this year at the Wells Fargo Championship. He had a 5th place at the Players. And if you go back and look at all the strokes gained stats, essentially since the end of January, there are only 3 players who have gained more strokes than Jason Day on average, and all 3 of those guys are priced more than $10,000 this week. This looks like a great opportunity to get a guy who can legit raise the claret jug on Sunday for only $8,800. I'm all in on Jason Day.
Ryan Barra from the Golflandia podcast and FantasyGolfInsiders.com.
My pick to win the 2018 Open Championship is Matthew Fitz. I'm just kidding. I'm taking Mark Leishman. 4 straight cuts made at the Open Championship, including 3 top 6 finishes. Probably should have won at St. Andrews a few years ago. He lost in the playoff to Zach Johnson, but he was really in control of that late on Sunday. At the AT&T Byron Nelson, on an American Link-style course, he finished 2nd. Probably should have won again, but Aaron Wise stole that one on the weekend. He has 7 top 10 finishes on tour this season, finished 13th in his last start at the Quicken Loans National, and is one of the best scramblers on tour. I think Leishman is ready to win a major.
Toe tagging Tambo from FantasyGuruElite.com.
With my pick for the Open, I'm going back to the well with my boy Ricky Fowler. On the last show, I predicted he'd go back-to-back, and while he didn't get it done at the U.S. Open, he did come back strong on Sunday and still finish T20 after an 84 on Saturday's round. Carnoustie has been set up well for him all year. I expect this to be a great spot for Ricky. The links course, the windy conditions, everything's right up his alley. He's only ever missed one cut at the Open. He even had a T2 back in 2014, and I expect this to be the one for him to get it done.
Let's bring Fantasy Golf Metrics Jeff Ulrich back one more time. Jeff, who's your winner?
Pat, my pick to win the 2018 Open Championship is none other than Paul Casey. And I know he has some trouble closing out golf tournaments. You don't have to tell me, but if there's ever a spot for him to get it done in a major championship, I do feel like this is it. He's one of the best all-around players in the world right now. There's no doubt. Up to 33rd in strokes gained putting used to be an area of weakness for him. 13th in scrambling, 6th in strokes gained approach. He's got a ton of Open Championship experience to fall back on as well. 5 of the last 7 winners of the Open have been 39 years or older. Paul Casey definitely fits that bill. He also has played well in the year's first 2 majors, coming in great form. T2 in his last start at the Travelers. I think he's going to flip the narrative this week, and I think he's going to get it done. He is my pick to win the 2018 Open Championship.
DraftKings Masters Millionaire Maker winner, Drew Matthews from FantasyGolfBag.com.
My pick to win the British Open of 2018 at Carnoustie is none other than Jason Day. Jason Day finished 4th at St. Andrews in 2015. Both courses are lined up right against the North Sea. They get a lot of that southeast wind, so pretty much standard stuff over there in Scotland. He is first in strokes gained inside 50 yards, which actually is a key stat for link style courses. And you can actually get him 25-1 to win. So go ahead and place that bet.
Derek Farnsworth, aka Notorious from Roto Grinders.
Pat, while I would love to have a pants-free weekend watching Tiger Woods win another major, I am going to go with Ricky Fowler. He's been so close so many times. He obviously likes links golf, as evidenced by his win at the Scottish Open 2 years ago. He has 2 top 5 finishes at the Open Championship, and he's flying under the radar a little bit, which is right where we want him. Typically when he's the favorite, he doesn't perform all that well. He's one of the best scramblers on tour, and there are a few that I feel better over a 10-foot par putt. He's going to have to make a lot of those to compete this week, but perhaps he can take home his first major.
Josh Perry from the Action Network.
Hey, Pat. The Open Championship, I'm going to go a little bit off the board and go with Ian Poulter in that 60 to 6-1 range. The Open Championship's a tournament where veteran guys come through all the time. We've seen it with Stenson make his breakthrough. We saw it a few years back with Darren Clark. We know Ian Poulter's going to keep the ball in play off the tee, and his approach game and short game have been on point this year. It feels like it's just one of those years where it's going to be one of those veteran guys who come a little bit off the radar and take this thing down at a difficult course. So I'm going to go back Poulter at that 66-1 number and see if we can hit that.
Skylar Hoke from the Golf Guru's Twitter account.
Alex Noren is our pick to take home the Claret Jug at this year's Open Championship. With 4 victories on links courses, Noren clearly knows the path to success when it comes to the ultimate test in golf. Trusty off the tee, steady approach game, and clutch putting to escape damage has led him to 2 career top 10s at the Open. Coming off a win at the Open de France, anchored by gaining over 10 strokes ball striking, Noren's game is firing on all cylinders. Still available at 35-1 and only $8,300 on DraftKings, Noren is ready for his first major championship.
Reed Fowler.
My pick for the 2018 Open Championship is going to be Justin Rose. His current form is fantastic. His long form is fantastic. Everything is setting up perfectly for this guy to win this week. He's already got 2 victories this season, really good finishes at Augusta at the US Open. His game sets up perfectly for major championships. So take a look at Justin Rose.
Fan Vice's Andrew Barron.
Honestly, the true winner here is going to be the weather with how unpredictable it is. So I'm going to lay out 2 different scenarios. If it's reasonably calm or this dude gets a good draw, I really like Hideki. In reasonable conditions, just throwing darts all over the place, hitting fairways, being pretty long, I think can really work here. Or if it's totally gnarly and everyone's getting messed up, you're going to need more of a recovery specialist and the iron work becomes less important. If that happens, I'll take Ricky Fowler.
James Miles from FanshareSports.com.
My pick to win the 2018 Open Championship at Carnoustie is going to be Ricky Fowler, an excellent links player, who has a links win at Castle Stewart, has missed only one cut in his 8 starts at the Open Championship while producing 2 top 5s. He has the 6th most birdies per round in his 8 starts at the Open for this field, and is second best in the field in bogeys per round in his Open starts. In good form right now, producing 2 top 10s, making 9 out of his last 10 cuts. Ricky Fowler has the tools to get it done here. He has the current form to get it done, and he has the links experience. I'm taking Ricky Fowler for the win this week at Carnoustie.
The NYC punter, Russell Whalen.
Henrik Stenson is my pick to win the 2018 British Open at Carnoustie. We all know what he did a couple of years back. We all know about the killer 3-wood. We all know about his ability to keep it in play, stay safe, navigate the greens. I think this guy can go in there and do it again in a treacherous place that's going to absolutely destroy most players and have them frazzled. If he's feeling good, if the elbow's not an issue and he gets on the right side of the draw, look for this guy to bring home another claret jug. I've absolutely loaded it large. Good luck, guys.
From futureoffantasy.com and Roto World, it's Josh Culp.
Dustin Johnson is the winner of the 2018 Open Championship. He's entered the final round inside the top 20 in each of his last 8 Open Championship appearances. 5 of those have gone as top 15s, but I think this year he gets the job done.
Josh Burkett of GutsCorner.com.
Who better to pick to win a major title than the guy who brought one home just a few weeks ago? Brooks Koepka snagged his 2nd consecutive US Open on what may be the most Scottish Link style course available this side of the pond. Koepka is placed inside the top 10 in each of his last 2 appearances in the Open, which could be attributed to his time spent cutting his teeth on the European Tour. And if you need any more reason to think Brooks could ship this thing, just check out his girlfriend Jenna Sims' Instagram page, and you know that this dude is winning at everything.
That'll do it on the Pat Mayo Experience Mega British Open DraftKings Millionaire Maker picks and preview. I want to thank Ben Rasa and Mike Leone for donating so much of their time, Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, Rick Gaiman, and the slew of other contributors for help broadening the perspective of all of the picks, so you don't just have my crappy ones in there. Subscribe to the show, rate and review if you haven't already, especially if you want to get in the draw for some free Millionaire Maker bucks. Or just give the show a like, along with your favorite DraftKings play, along with your DraftKings handle in the comment section. Or go to my Twitter page @ThePME or Facebook.com/ThePME and share any one of the British Open shows you can find. Just a retweet on Twitter, no quote tweeting. So retweet and reply to the tweet with your DK handle and the hashtag DKBrit. DKBRIT. That easy. And you don't want to miss out on the opportunity to get a free yearly membership to FantasyNational.com. Get in the draw by following @FantasyNational on Twitter and giving the pinned tweet a retweet. That's all you need to do. Thank you for watching and good luck in the British Open DraftKings Millionaire Maker. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!